to the Piedmont Triad Podcast.
Before I get too old, I'm gonna head down to Muscle Shoals. Baby, you can meet me at the station.
Welcome to another episode of the Piedmont Triad Podcast, where we talk about the unusual people and places in the Piedmont Triad area. I'm your host, David Locklear, and today we are talking with David Bowen, the co-owner of Ginger Fox Beverage, located at 905 South Broad Street, Suite 105 in Winston-Salem. David did an interview with us in the summer of 2022, and somehow it was lost or deleted, still floating somewhere out there in the ether. And after several failed attempts between us to redo the interview, we finally managed to reconnect, and you can now finally enjoy his stories of being an acrobatic performer in the Asian water circus House of Dancing Water while he was living in China. You can also hear how he was almost cut in half by a hydraulic system during a rehearsal of the performance, and how he and his wife, Madeline Fox, are now trying to bring the international cocktail experience that they discovered overseas to the Winston-Salem area.
Proud of us.
I know, after just several months of trying, this actually happened.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased. I feel like we've conquered a mountain.
Likewise. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Now,
Right.
How's everything going? Yeah, right.
It's good. It's been crazy. I have no idea. I still haven't been able to find it. The old interview, I have no idea what happened to it. The only thing I can figure is it must have been this computer is a little old, and it's starting to do odd things. And all I can figure is something must have happened to it that way. The computer. I'm going to blame the equipment. I don't care what anybody says about.
Blame the equipment. Are you kidding? Yeah.
That old
no,
saying.
We don't need people involved in this. No.
I know. Well, thanks, Ben. I appreciate you talking to me. What time do you need to hop off? So I'll be kind of aware of that.
1:15. No worries. Like I've got a little bit of flexibility.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Well, I'll just hop right into it then. One of the big reasons I wanted to talk to you was because you are an acrobat. And before I even go any further in saying something really stupid or completely uninformed, I'm going to let you be my teacher and tell me where that came from. How did you become an acrobat? What was the earliest moment where you decided that was your thing?
Yeah. Okay. So I hesitate. Funny enough, I hesitate to call myself an acrobat because I've worked with acrobats, and they are something else.
Right.
So let me back up here a little bit. So my acrobatic, claim to fame, I guess, is doing a show called The House of Dancing Water in Macau, China. I played the lead character, Jean. And it's kind of a Cirque Du Soleil company that branched out from Cirque du Soleil called Dragon. Mm-hmm. And it's this big water spectacle, and I played the prince in the show. So I did a little bit of high diving, some dancing, fighting, scuba diving. It was a crazy, wild, acrobatic water show. How I got into that? Yeah, so how I got into that was through acting, really. I went to School of the Arts, so North Carolina School of the Arts, which is located in Winston-Salem. And I graduated there in 2015 with an acting degree and had basically been self-taught to a certain extent and tutored by some people with some experience. But I could do a back handspring and a backflip and a handstand, but I'm not the craziest acrobat you'll ever be, that's for sure. So how I got into it, though, was in middle school, funny enough. So the school that I went to in Northeast Georgia had a Cirque-sponsored Cirque program. So they would bring instructors from Cirque Du Soleil down and basically do these, at the time they seemed like full-scale, fully produced shows. And I'm sure they were, a bunch of kids doing what they could at the time. But, that kind of struck the spark in me for this different kind of theater. So School of the Arts is focused really on on like classic theater, right? It's a classical acting school,
Mm-hmm.
Shakespearean based, with a real like leaning towards like Stanislavski style trainings, which is, we get into all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically I graduated there and immediately booked this job. I'm trying to work back and make sure I'm answering the questions here.
Right.
Sorry, there's a downtown Winston-Salem. There's police cars and fire trucks going by all the time.
It's early in the day.
But basically, oh yeah, all day. So basically, I got into it in middle school. Started juggling. Started really idolizing. My sister was 4 years older, and she was doing a bunch of aerial work in the Cirque program. And I basically just latched onto it as like a hobby and something that I did a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So through middle school, through high school, did a little bit in high school, but was more focused on like team sports, soccer and baseball for that period.
Mm-hmm.
And then started really tapping back into the acrobatic stuff at School of the Arts with the stage combat work that we did there. So got into stage combat and stunts, and ended up kind of redeveloping these kind of auxiliary acrobatic skills around that program. Then, timeline-wise, working through it, my fourth year, so I guess it would have been the beginning of 2015, we had a man named Chad Leslie, who actually teaches at School of the Arts now. He was the artistic director for House of Dancing Water. So he came back to school. He's an alum of school as well, School of the Arts. He came back to school to basically tour, and I think he was mostly scouting out technicians, because the design and production school at School of the Arts is really just like the top-notch school in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, Cirque and all these touring theater companies and, mega spectacles coming and scouting from that program. So I think he was mostly down to scout for design and production students, but he ran like a little mini audition for the acting students as well. And I participated in that. And a couple months, about a month actually after graduation, I was living in New York and got a call asking if I wanted to come out to Macau to audition for the show. So that's kind of how that unfolded.
Wow. And how long was it? How long was it before you found out that you were a part of the show and you were going to have to transplant yourself halfway around the globe?
Oh, it was like a month later. It was really quick.
Okay.
We graduated, I guess, in May. I guess you graduate in May, right? And then by August, I was moving to China.
Wow, that's a
so
hell of a jump.
It kind of played. It was a hell of a jump. Yeah, I mean, I'm from Northeast Georgia, like this little small town. Like Deliverance was filmed in my hometown. To give a little bit of reference point, and and I went to school here in Winston, and then moved to New York for just a hot second before kind of getting ripped away from the traditional track.
That's wild. So when you were there, did you run into any kind of cultural barriers or any, like language problems and whatnot?
Okay, so yes and no. Yes. I think the overall answer is yes. Absolutely ran into some cultural barriers. But that was kind of the beauty of it. So where I was living in Macau, it's I don't know how much you know about Macau, but it's right outside of Hong Kong. It's about a 45-minute ferry ride. Well, there's a bridge now. It's the world's largest or longest bridge between Macau and Hong Kong.
Oh wow!
But so it's about a 45-minute ride away from Hong Kong. It's this island, or kind of a series of islands and now reclaimed land, so like man-made islands, that is just like, at the time I was there, it was the gambling capital of the world. So
wow.
It's about, like, the entire land mass is about half the size of Manhattan. It's the most densely populated region in the world. And it was the highest GDP per capita in the world when I was there. They were doing, so in a series of islands about half the size of Manhattan, they were doing 7 or 8 times the annual revenue as Vegas.
Wow. Good.
Which is just, it was insane. I mean, it was an insane place to be dropped into.
That's a hard number to wrap my head around, because I was just in Vegas a couple of years ago and I was really startled by how much it had blown up and how much money it looked like it had. So to multiply that times 8, that's a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, I think that kind of says a lot about what that culture shock was. And of course, it's in China, but it's a major city. It's an international hub where everybody's traveling from everywhere to live there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the culture shock aspect of it was. It was definitely probably a 3 or 4, longer than that, probably month transition, and just like figuring out how to live in a different place with completely different social contracts in place, with completely different. I mean, obviously the language was different, but it's an old Portuguese colony, so there are 4 languages that are commonly spoken in Macau: Cantonese, Mandarin, Portuguese, and English. So most business is done in English. The company that I was working for was a Belgian company, but because it was such an international group of people, English was kind of the language that was a part of the theater. So I ended up having this life where my 9 to 5, which was actually, a 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., I guess, was in English, and then everything else was just completely international. Mm-hmm. There was no, hanging out with just a group of Americans, hanging out with just a group of Europeans or whatever. Like anytime you find yourself at a table, it would be just this complete mix of different cultures and languages from around the world. Mm-hmm. Which I guess really tied back to the time, like the middle school that I was telling you about that I went to was very similar. Like it was in the mountains of Northeast Georgia, and like I think there were 300 people from 6th grade to 12th grade, a really small school. Yeah. But they brought in people from all over the world. So, like, I was going to school with a bunch of Korean people and Japanese people, people from Africa, people from Europe. Like, it was a really culturally diverse school in this culturally not diverse place. So, I think jumping back into that for me was like, it was refreshing. Mm-hmm. To be in a place with everyone. I don't know. That's what I really like. I think that's what I really valued from the experience was kind of just instantly getting out of this America, Western centric mindset, realizing that there's like a completely different. Well, there's so many different, completely different ways to person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that because I love whenever I'm able to travel internationally. Part of the fun for me is just walking around the area that's near wherever I'm staying, because you'll always sort of run into the local flavor, and you'll sort of get the local vibe, and you go into the stores and then you see a lot is very similar, but then there's these odd little differences, and it just, your whole brain sort of shifts, and it becomes almost like it's fascinating. It becomes really interesting because you realize how little you know about the world and how much you're actively learning without even really trying.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I think the thing that I really got out of it was like it's exactly what you said. It's that like mental shift. It like actually reforms your brain, like how you see the world. Like for me, like Maddie and I, we always talk about like it shrinks the world. Like realizing that we're in a 12-hour time difference. 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock a.m. to p.m. But it's a 14-hour flight. Like it's a small place, and yes, everyone's completely different. And all these cultures develop for really different reasons. But like at the end of the day, everybody's the same. Yeah. The really like poignant moment for me, I remember we took a week in. I had a week dark one time where the show wasn't performing, and we went to Thailand. And I remember we got in the shuttle from the airport to the hotel, and all of a sudden we were driving down like rural Alabama streets. Like it was not Thailand. It was not a foreign place. Like you looked outside and you ignored that it wasn't English written on the signs, and all of a sudden you just realize that everybody's exactly the same. Like everybody's just trying to survive. Everybody's just trying to do their best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they're making the best out of whatever situation that they're put in, and no matter where you go, there are going to be sort of universal experiences of a different class experience, a different, language experience, a different culture experience. For me, I'm sure I would have a hard time getting used to doing any kind of bowing. Is that a Japanese thing, or is that just an Asian thing? I may be getting that wrong.
That wasn't really part of my experience of living in China, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I think that might be a Japanese thing.
I think it
can't
is.
really
I think I'm
that.
misspeaking, but yeah, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, not at all. But I think that's and here's another thing that I think is really, really fascinating and was a nice kind of wake up call. I don't know, like we were going through all these like I was there from 2015 to the end of 2017, which is obviously a hell of a time to be a human being.
Yeah.
Especially an American human being, right? Like we went through some big shifts in those years. And I think we did. And I think the thing that I really realized is like nobody really gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like internationally, like all of this like
yeah, I was going to say, I think I know what you're getting at. The idea when I went to London, I was under the impression, and I don't even really know why, that a lot of people in the UK were not big fans of Americans.
Yes.
And so, I get there and I'm fully prepared for backlash because I just have an American accent. So I'm kind of bracing for it. And every person that talked to me and brought up that I was American, they found me fascinating, which I was not expecting. I was almost like an anthropology experiment for them. They're, oh, you're from America? Oh, like say more words. Really? You're the one with
say more words. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very helpful for a lot of people to come around and realize that, like what you said, everyone's just trying to do the best that they can, and they really aren't trying to step on anybody's toes. It always seems to be the small percentage of people who are clanging their swords the loudest are the ones that don't represent most everybody.
Yeah, hope that, right?
Right. So,
no, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially on a macro level.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, when you were there from 2015 to 2017. Approximately how many shows did you participate in?
I think I did a little over 900.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's the same thing every day.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It's weird because like that was the dream. Like since I was 11 years old in middle school, like literally it was my dream job. That's what I wanted to do, and I think, doing 900 shows of it, I don't know, maybe realize like, the dream's great, but like, dream's a reality too. And like, it is a job at the end of the day,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sort of a curse of being a human, is that it seems like no matter what we do, we'll never have a satisfied mind. So it's like, even when you get to live your dream, you get to the end, you're like, it's fine. And so, I mean, that's interesting though. Did it kind of like wreck your body, or were you able to, pretty much maintain everything? No real long-term permanent damage.
I think being a bar owner has wrecked my body more than being a professional acrobat.
That I could see.
No, I mean, like I had some injuries. I had a couple of my front teeth knocked out. I got some stitches on my face. But was relatively injury prone, thank God. We had a top notch physiotherapy team at the theater, so like it sounds kind of ridiculous, but like we were pretty well taken care of. Like if you ever had anything that you needed done, like you could just go get a massage or go get acupuncture or go get ultrasound or whatever. Like there's so many things that they were just kind of set up to take care of the athletes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty nice. So it sounds like your job was really just, exercising and working out and performing every night, which is, from the outside looking in, that's a very healthy lifestyle to lead.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I think, it's like anything else, but like, it was a good life there for a while.
Yeah.
There for a while.
So when did you leave, and what made you come back to the States?
Okay, so I left the show before my last show at the beginning of December in 2017. a couple of things contributed to making the decision to wrap things up. The show was going through some big issues, honestly. Like the theater was hitting it. I think it had been around for about 10 years at that point, 7 or 8 years maybe. I can't really remember exactly. And there had been a bunch of changes in ownership of the show, and theater space itself was starting to show wear and tear. I mean, it's a massive pool with a bunch of hydraulic lift systems in it that are designed to like run every single day, and it's a massive thing that starts to fall apart. But anyway, what happened was it basically there were daily reports of there's oil leaks in the pool, and the visibility in the water is not good today, and all that kind of stuff. And I think what really kicked it off was like what really sealed the deal was about 2 months before. No, I guess I'd already submitted I'd already given my notice at this point. But about 2 months before, I almost got chopped in half by a lift system.
Oh man, good night.
Yeah, so and it was a thing that had happened in the other shows, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it. There are obviously a lot of safeties in place, but if you've got, imagine, I don't know if you've looked up videos or pictures of what the theater space I'm talking about is, but imagine this probably, I don't know, like a slightly smaller than a football field size space, like stage, that's subdivided into 12, I think, moving platforms that can submerge up to, I think it's 9 meters depth, and it could be like 2 meters above ground, above water level as well. And you've got these, it's technology. It's going to fail. It's going to need to be repaired. And if you're running it into the ground, doing 10 show weeks, it's going to eventually need to like pause and be reset. So yeah, there was an issue with the lift system. Basically, there was like a whirlpool effect that I got caught in one time. And this was it's actually my second to last show because they ended up shutting down. I ended up not getting to do my last couple of months because the theater shut down. But yeah, I almost got sucked in between some lifts.
Goodness.
And then I think the more like the reason that it was time to wrap up because it was time to wrap up. I had given my notice a little bit before that. And it had been something that Maddie, my wife, and I had been discussing for a long time. I think I'd finished up my first contract, and it was time to move back. It was time to allow Matt to. Let me back up. Maddie was basically bi-coastal between Macau and Hong Kong and New York City for the entire time that I was there for almost 3 years.
And Maddie is your wife, right?
Maddie's my wife, yeah.
Okay.
So she was hopping back and forth doing, we did the math at one point, and she had done 2 weeks of her life in the flight, in the air between New York and Hong Kong. And it was time to wrap things up. It was time to come back to the States and to move back to New York and to try and figure out what to do here. I don't know. It's kind of a difficult question to answer because
yeah, just the way life took you, I guess, and just the particular direction you were going, and that's where you went.
Yeah, well, I think you hit a cap, right? You do 900 shows, and at that point, you kind of have the choice of do I keep doing this? Is this show my career, or is this show my life? Which many people made it. It was a good life. There were people who did that show for years and years and years. There are people in Cirque shows for literally 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and they move from position to position as their bodies break down and they can't do the acrobatics anymore. They train up as a clown, and then they, work as characters. And there's a trajectory. There's a growth trajectory for acrobats in those kinds of shows. But I didn't really want that to be my life. And I think more specifically, it was time to give Maddie the chance to take a swing at it.
Yeah.
She completely uprooted her life and everything that she had going for her. She was really well positioned right out of school to do some big things. She got a really good couple of agencies in New York, bi-coastal agencies, that she was represented in New York and LA. And it was time to it was time to come back and figure it out together.
Yeah. And it's good when you're able to do that together because you feel like a team in that particular type of situation. My wife and I, we have particular types of things that will happen where I'm very rest assured that if something happens in a particular arena in our life, we will be Batman and Robin. We will team up and we will handle that, and that's a nice thing to be able to say about your significant other is when they are really at your back all the time. So I think that's awesome. Yeah. She did that for you.
Oh, it was incredible. It was superhuman, honestly. Like it's gonna make me cry. No, I mean it did.
This podcast, damn it.
We talked about this. I'm super grateful for that from her. She gave me the opportunity to pursue my dream and be supported in it.
And that's great that she was able to, do it and that you guys are back here. And was it her idea to start the Ginger Fox or was it your idea or, was it just sort of a slow evolution?
Yes. And I think all of those a little bit. I'm going to give her credit for it though. Like she's the mastermind on it. Like you're talking to the wrong person if you want to talk about Ginger Fox. Like she is, no, I mean, I make good cocktails. I'm the kind of person who's going to figure out exactly the right recipe and spend hours and hours and hours developing a technique and learning the prep and learning the inventory and management, like all of the tangibles. That's my thing.
Right.
But the intangibles, the people, the planning, the large, like big picture thinking that is required, especially with a company like Ginger Fox, that's Maddie. Like she understands people. She understands like, the world in a way that I'm still trying to figure out, dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's good because, you have that different perspective and that's very important, I think, in a relationship to have that because my wife and I are kind of similar. I sold insurance while she went to school for her master's degree and now she's a mental health therapist and she, runs her own private practice and whatnot. And I'm kind of in the same situation you are, which is she's much better at talking to people, hearing their problems, understanding, and I'm much better at hammering things in and yelling at people over the phone when they try to take money from us when they're not supposed to. So we have a similar dynamic, so I can relate.
Yeah.
So when you are making the cocktails, you told me previously that you guys, when you opened up the Ginger Fox, it was because you wanted to give a cocktail experience to Winston, the Triad, that is much more, I guess, typical of other places in the world, and it is not very well known here. And would you be able to elaborate on that, on what kind of cocktails you guys make that sets Ginger Fox aside from other cocktail bars?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I guess it all ties together. Like there is a through line to this. So we got into all this, like we got into the hospitality side of things. Like both of us, had worked in restaurants. Both of us had a little bit of experience with high-end hospitality. Well, not high-end hospitality, through childhood and adolescence and some in college for Maddie. Mm-hmm. But the hospitality spark really ignited in the trips back and forth between New York and Hong Kong. Maddie was working at Busy's Jazz Club at Lincoln Center in New York as a server there, and it was just a really well-connected, high-end hospitality establishment. You'd have like Dave Brubeck's kids coming in and playing jazz sets. And, you'd be sitting next to just celebrities. Like I got to visit it once, and it was just one of those like, ooh, this is something different. So when we were in Hong Kong, Macau, like we were going to these places that were just doing different things. Like cocktail culture in the States is getting back to the place where it could be and getting back on the international level. And, the way we're marketed, like, the bars in the States are cutting edge and they're really pushing the boundaries. But in my experience, like the bars over in Asia, like there are there are fewer regulations. There's more creativity. There's more international influence from every direction, and everybody's just kind of like hopping around so much that you end up with this like cultural mixing pot that just breeds this insane attention to detail, this insane like palette to pull from. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to bring to Winston is the international palette is like more experimental cocktails and experiential cocktails, not making it about how do I make money doing this, but how do I affect a person doing this? Mm-hmm. You know, like thinking more about the why than about the end game and the money making of it, I think.
Yeah, like how you can make the very best product and hopefully make money off of it. You know, like you're trying to start with integrity.
We'll report
that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think but it's honestly it's something we're still trying to define. I think that's the honest answer. Like what sets us apart is something we're really still trying to define. In New York, and in major cities in the States, each city has its kind of style of cocktails, right? Like New York cocktails are super like boozy, bitter, stirred, like Manhattans, Negroni riffs, and martinis, and like it's a very like hard drinking culture. You know, it's one of those like there's a high barrier of entry. And this is I want to say like we're not like we're not the only people in the state pushing the boundaries. No, by no means. Like there are obviously other places that are popping up like this, and there's been a major cultural shift in the last couple of years, specifically with international influences really taking hold in the States. But the kind of traditional, bow ties, suspenders, rolled up sleeves, kind of 20s vibe, right? Like the pre-prohibition. I guess it's not 20s, but I guess like the pre-prohibition quotation marks around that. Mm-hmm. Cocktail vibe was really strong there in New York and really kind of rippled out in the States from New York there from a long time, like New York to San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And it's just now, I think in the last like 5 years, starting to shift where like being in a cocktail bar is fun again, and it's not like everyone who's working behind a cocktail bar is like trying to prove to you that they know more than you. Mm. And I think it's taken a little bit longer for those barriers of entry to what we do to drop elsewhere in the country than they have in major cities, because there's just not as much in and out. There's not as much cultural exchange happening in smaller markets. Yeah. So because we were on the guest side in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia, Singapore, all those places, like, and seeing what it was from a guest experience, and then in 2017 until 2020, working in those environments in New York, I think we have a kind of a really, I think we have a really interesting point of view on that. Like, there's a tendency amongst bartenders to like make people feel bad if they want to drink with vodka. Like a vodka old fashioned is kind of like a joke in the bartending. And like, I will make someone a vodka old fashioned all day, every day, if that's what they want to do. Like, I will add 3 ounces of simple syrup to your old fashioned if that's what you want to drink. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the coming together of the Southern hospitality and New York high end like machinery of hospitality and just like wild, blown open creativity from the Asian market. Mm-hmm. That we're really trying to like coalesce into something here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're trying to be accommodating, but also expand a person's palate when they come into your establishment. Yeah,
absolutely. I think like you talk about like upselling a lot in restaurants, right? Like you're trying to make more money. So like, oh, what's your preference of bourbon? Do you like Blanton? Because that's going to be a $5 upcharge or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think like often we'll do the opposite, or it's like we're trying to give people, we're trying to actually connect with people, actually listen to people and hear their needs, and not just give them what they want, but allow them to start with what they want and then understand that it's safe to push that boundary with us, because we're not going to say, oh, you really like that, really simple whiskey sour. You really like that? Let me drop this boozy, bitter, nobody actually likes it unless you spent 10 years trying to like it cocktail in front of you. Like, it doesn't help anyone, All it does is serve the bartender's ego at that point. Because, like, I can drink it. I've, like, mustered up enough strength to drink this thing that might objectively taste bad.
Right.
Um,
And I think a lot of people are really afraid to say a drink tastes bad, especially when they're being told it's supposed to be good.
Oh, it's one of the hardest things. So we do a style serve here, and our next location, Easy Talk, is really going to drill into this. But one of the items we offer on our menu here is bartender's choice, which there's a couple of different approaches to it. There's bartender's choice, which is kind of like I've got a recipe, I've got a log of 400 cocktail recipes in my head, and I'm going to ask you some pointed questions. Specific questions. Do you like, bourbon? Do you like gin? Do you like? And basically, it's a process of elimination, right? Mm-hmm. There's that, which is like kind of what we talk about, like bartender's choice style cocktails, and then there's also like bespoke cocktails, which is more like, what are you feeling? Like, what are your feelings right now? What place are you in? What kind of drinks do you typically like to drink? What are you feeling like drinking tonight? Like, it's much more involved and vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And like, it actually requires some vulnerability from both the guest and the server to get to something that the guest is going to like. And I personally think the most difficult part of that process is genuinely, honestly checking in with someone after you drop that cocktail and asking them if they liked it, asking them if their drink's tasting okay, and actually giving them. I think it's the most difficult thing to do as a hospitality worker, and specifically the bartender, is to genuinely allow someone to tell you that they didn't like it. Mm-hmm. Because it requires total openness, total vulnerability from both parties, from everyone involved, which, like, for me is it's the challenge. Yeah. It's the emotional connection with the other person,
Yeah, and probably a lot of people are coming in there with, the old baggage of, well, if I say that I don't like this drink, I still have to pay for it, and then if I want another one, I got to pay for that one too. So, yeah, that's an interesting sort of unspoken barrier that it sounds like you're trying to break down, and I think that it's honestly very good for people. It sounds like the type of honesty my oldest will give me when I make something that's not very tasty for dinner. Like, not long ago, she told me that I put too much hamburger in the spaghetti sauce, and her quote was, "And it tastes like ass." And so, like, all right, that's excellent to know. I wouldn't have known that otherwise. So that was blunt, but thank you.
Right, but they can tell you that because you're emotionally vulnerable, right? Because they don't have the expectation that they're going to get punished for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
there's not this sense of, exactly. There's not this sense of you versus me. And I think, like, I don't want to generalize because I don't believe that this is the case across the board. But I think sometimes in this market, I experience it a little bit as us versus them. As we're the frontline workers, we're the bartenders who this is our home, and you're in our place. Yeah. And yes, that's true. But you've welcomed them into your place. And hospitality is about, like, making them feel welcome, not having any sort of doubt in terms of, like, trust.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think in that kind of a situation, too, for me personally, if I feel like I'm being put at ease by the establishment that I'm in, if they're trying to put me at ease, it really does make me want to give more money, like tip more, or, try to get something to go if that's the type of place that, allows that kind of thing. And, when you feel comfortable and you feel, like you said, vulnerable, for me, I feel a little bit more apt to be supportive of that type of a place.
For sure. And I think that's an awesome result when that happens. Obviously, I'm never going to be like, oof, well, why did they give me a 50% tip? Yeah. Don't they know that that's just what I do? Of course, it's, like, so appreciated. And I think, like, the it's another part of that really, really difficult place that we're like line that we're trying to walk, where it's not expected that you would compensate us for that. It is expected that that's just of course what you would get when you come to Ginger Fox, because that's what we sell. We don't sell cocktails. We sell hospitality. We sell welcome. You know, we sell a place for people who might not have a place otherwise.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's the product.
In this day and age, the courtesy and hospitality have started to become currency. So I think that that's a good thing to be dealing with right now, because I think it's probably going to be more appreciated in this particular environment, especially with the inflation and tightening of budgets and whatnot. Courtesy, I think, is going to go a long, long way.
I hope so.
I know. I hope for your sake too, man. But you're still around, and it sounds like you guys are still doing all right. So I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad that you guys are doing what you're doing. And, you know, I know we're pressed for time. So do you want to let the listeners know where to find Ginger Fox Beverage, where they can find your socials, any things that you might want to plug? Go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you guys.
Yeah, so the best way to contact us is through our website, which is Ginger Fox Beverage, all one word, .com, gingerfoxbeverage.com. And we're actually in the middle of building out our like kind of concrete, like our own location right now, which we're really excited about. It's going to be called Easy Talk. It's going to be down in Winston-Salem. Should be opening in the next month or 2 months. We're trying to get fully operational by the middle of summer. But it's going to have a lot of, like, there's a whole separate bar where we're going to be doing bartender's choice service. We're going to have our cocktail menu. We're going to have coffee. We're going to be working with a couple of local bakers to bring some really high quality baked goods to our guests. And yeah, so if you're looking to check us out in real life, you got to visit us down at Easy Talk. And if you want to connect about events or consulting or menu development or anything else, we do a lot of catering as well. Shoot us an email on the website.
Cool. That sounds good. Yeah, everybody definitely go check it out. I'm going to take my wife down there one evening in the next month or so. Now with the weather starting to warm up, I think this is perfect weather to go down and try a different type of cocktail that I've never had before. I'm intrigued by bartender's choice. I always find it fascinating.
It's fun. Yeah, it's fun, and we listen. I don't know. We're here to talk. We're here to listen.
There you go. Well, I will let you go, David. Thanks so much for reconnecting with me, man. And I'm going to put this out probably in about 3 to 4 weeks. I have a backup, just FYI. So I'm actively watching both the mixing board and the computer. So two things are definitely recording us. So there should not be an incident this time.
Worst case scenario, we have to do it again. It's always good to work through it, right?
Right. Yeah. And worst case scenario, maybe I can just come down to the bar and we'll just drink and have a long, drunken podcast episode. Shit, maybe we should just do that anyway.
Oh, no. I know, right?
Right.
You gotta come by our house. We got some more fun stuff than we can get in North Carolina, unfortunately.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, then we're going to have to set this up. It's a date.
Great. Let's do it.
All right, man.
All right, David. Well, thank you so much for chatting.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right, man. Bye-bye. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Piedmont Triad Podcast. Make sure you visit Ginger Fox Beverage at 905 South Broad Street in downtown Winston-Salem, and make sure you go to check out their website, gingerfoxbeverage.com, as well as all of their social media outlets. Also, make sure you go to the Piedmont Triad Podcast for all of the episodes of the Piedmont Triad Podcast and the links to all of our social media outlets. Also, if you have a story and would like to appear on a future episode, or if you know of any strange people or places in the Piedmont Triad area that you think would make a good feature on a future show, shoot us an email at piedmonttriadpodcast@gmail.com. And again, thanks to Matt Smith and the Cowboy Spankers for letting us use their song Not Tonight as our intro and outro music. Thanks again to Brian Falk, my friend, for the artwork of the Piedmont Triad podcast. And thanks to you for listening. Until next time, Piedmont.
Maybe I should keep on moving. You're like the devil when the sun goes down. Stay away from me. Well, I'm too far gone. There ain't nothing here to see, babe. So you best just move along.